Hey guys, I am back again and I'm going over chapter 6. Took a while to get through chapter 5. That was a hard chapter, but we're finally here on chapter 6. Okay. Um So, our body has several ways to protect itself from injury and infection. We're going to talk about the innate natural abilities we have to maintain our health. What our body does naturally, like what we are born with, the protect ourselves when bacteria spreads. Um, so, innate is basically what you are born with. Okay, y'all. So we have innate is the first line of defense is innate includes first line of defense and second line of defense. And so first line is like skin, saliva, tears, mucus, earwax, stomach acid, flora. And second line is inflammatory response, fever, and interferons. So we're going to be talking about those today. So immunity. The first line is of innate immunity is our natural barriers. Normal flora, that's on the surface of our barriers. So like we have bacteria all over us. That is not harming us. It's actually protecting us. And so that is what we call our natural flora. The second line of defense is like the inflammatory response that kicks in to protect when the first line of defense gets hurt or injured. Um, the second line of defense comes in to respond to damaged tissues. Okay, so if we get stabbed, our first line of defense has been compromised. So now we're going to go into the second line of defense to inflame it and fix it. So if you have any type of blunt force injury, that's when your second line is going to come in because your first line has now been compromised. And we do have third line, but I'm not even going to talk about that right now because that's in chapter 7. So the first line includes physical barriers like the skin, tissue, lining of GI tract, urinary tract, respiratory tract. Um, we have ciliated cells that help flush bacteria, such like when we vomit, mucus, cilia, sneezing, flushing. Those are all first line defenses. We have like sebum, saliva, tears, sweat, and wax also protect us from bacteria. So that's first line of defense. And back to first line of defense, we actually also have flora on top of our skin and peptides that are antimicrobial. Okay, inflammatory response is our second line of defense. So this is causes heat, redness, swelling, pain, loss of function. And what this does is we're going to basically we're born with white blood cells, right? So we're going to bring those white blood cells to the area. So we're going to increase vasodilation so we can quickly get those white blood cells to come to the infected area to take care of the problem. We're going to increase vascular permeability and leakage so we can get those white blood cells out of the capillary into the tissue to protect and fight the bacteria that's in the tissue. We're going to have white blood adherence to the inner walls of the vesicles and migration through the vesicles. So basically what I said, they're called cams, or we call them, gosh, what were they called in physiology? I'll have to look it up. But there's these things that float down, and they're called CAMs. I know, CAM. It starts. I think it's cellular adhesion molecules. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. I got it. Cellular adhesion molecules, such as selectins, and these selectins are like basically, there are these like warning cones that stick to the inside of the vesicle of the capillary, and when the vessel dilates and white blood cells are rushing through like blood is always all the time, they're going to go, hey, the white blood cells are going to go, hey, look at this, look at all these warning signs, there's something going on over here, and the selectins are going to help um, stick the white blood cells on the wall of the vesicle, and so now the white blood vessels can do diapedesis and go through get out of the capillary and vesicles and go into the interstitial area to further fight the issue that's in the tissues. And so note, you'll probably be like, well, can't you have infection in the blood? That would be called sepsis. And that's a little bit more rare than having bacteria in the tissues. So sepsis, you would have to be on antibiotics for that, because that would you do not want infections in your blood, okay? So cellular injury or bacteria invasion bypass first line, initiate second line, called the inflammatory response. Mast cell degranulation activate the plasma systems, release cellular products from the damaged cells. So the damaged cells, I'll go ahead and show you this picture, because this picture that they provided on the PowerPoint doesn't really give an accurate depiction. Let's get a good one that's not super confusing. Okay, so here we go. So right here we have a needle go through, and right here as you can see, that needle went through our first line, and so that first line is damaged. However, those cells that were damaged, they release these cellular products, and these activate mast cell degranulation, and the mast cell degranulation will then cause vasodilation. So the mast degranulation will like release histamine, cause vasodilation, and further continue the process of what I talked about, that these red blood cells and white blood cells are going to come through. The mast cell is also releasing cams that stick to the wall right here, and so those are the cones that, well, they're not technically cones, but just think about it. There's like a whole bunch of those warning cones, and these guys go, hey, look at what's going on over here, and then they're going to stick to the vesicle wall. The selectins are going to cause them to stick, and they're going to diapedese through to attack these blue dots. So the red dots are what the injured cell release. The blue dots are the bacteria, and these guys are going to phagocytose these bad bacterias like this. See? See? Yay! Okay. Okay. Moving on. Oh, hold on, there's a section I missed. So it causes vasodilation, vascular permeability, cellular infiltration. So cellular infiltration is, like I'm saying, this actually here, see all these white blood cells that are eating up that stuff? That's pus. So that's cellular infiltration right there. That's pus. And thrombopoiesis. So right here, yeah, we have this engulfing the bacteria, but right here, these damaged blood cells, we're also going to release other chemicals to cause a clotting process by thrombosis, so we can ensure that there's not a whole bunch of bleed out going on, and so we can build a fibrin mesh cloth and help get the sky back to normal, this cut, so we can fix it. Because if these guys come in and they help eat the bacteria, but this is still open, like who knows how long we'll bleed for? Probably a really long time. They prevent and limit infection. They limit the inflammatory responses, can limit and control inflammatory processes, initiate adaptive immune response, and initiate healing. Okay? So we have 3 systems going on. So we have the complement system, which help bring cells to the area to cause those neutrophils and monocytes to come in play and eat up that bacteria. The mast cell is releasing histamine to help get those guys those neutrophils and white blood cells coming to the area so they can phagocytose that bad bacteria. That would be the complement system. So the complement system is the cry for help of the white blood cells to come. So we're at the complement system, we're asking for the white blood cells to come and help out. The clotting system is what I said, when we're going to heal the actual cut itself. We're not trying to kill any bacteria with this. We're just having factor X come in, which will initiate thrombin, which would initiate fibrinogen and create fibrin, so we can get that fibrin mesh cloth to cause a blood clot so we're not bleeding out of that injury forever. And we're actually healing the actual wound itself. We're not doing any bacteria control here. We're just healing the wound itself. And then the Kinnin system is it's a lot like the mast cell release in the complement system, but we're using bradykinin to enhance the effects of the histamine, cause more vasodilation, and increase the permeability of the capillaries and vesicles so we can get those white blood cells into that area to help out. And it stimulates pain. So we know, hey, as the person, I can have something red on my back, and if it doesn't hurt, I don't know. Whereas the bradykinin helps in the Kinnin system helps stimulate pain, so we know, okay, something's not right back here. Okay. So the 4 primary functions of this cascade is oh wait, let me go up a little bit. Each system contains inactive enzymes, so proenzymes. So proenzymes, once they're activated, they cause a cascade of enzymes. So basically, it's a cascade event. These proenzymes convert into an active enzyme, which activates the next component in the series. So it's a cascade effect. That's basically what all 3 of these systems, they're all cascade effects. So really, really know this. Know the C, well, you don't need to know all the C's, but just know complement proteins are activating phagocytosis and mast cell release and complement. Factor X, thrombin and fibrinogen in the clotting, and bradykinin is stimulating pain and also helping out with vasodilation. Okay? Optimin, opsin, opsinin, Opsonization is the coat on the surface of bacteria that increases the odds of being destroyed. So on the surface of that bacteria, there's different receptors that allow ourselves to know, okay, this guy is foreign. So basically, okay, this is going to sound really wrong, but think that like we are talking to people, and you hear someone with a really strong accent. You're going to be like, hey, you're not from here, you're foreign. So think of that. Like that's the coat that it's like that's what allows our cells to know, okay, they're not originally from here. So that's what optimization is. But in cellular ways, that allows our own cells to recognize that that's a foreigner and it needs to be destroyed. Okay. Anaphylactic toxic activity is the release of histamine, vasodilation to increase capillary permeability. So like I was saying, this has a histamine effect, anaphylactic shock. We're swelling up, we're increasing capillary permeability so we can get more stuff from the capillaries into the tissues to help fight. Leukocyte chemotaxis, in response to leukocytes to the bacteria or site of injury. So that's basically what I was talking about. The CAMs, the I think it's the chemotaxic cellular adhesion molecules. So those are the guys that leukocyte chemotaxis is basically the what I was saying, the yellow caution cones. They're helping get the leukocytes to the site of bacteria. Cell lysis is when we destruct or invade cells or tissues. And about the foreigner thing, us humans obviously wouldn't we wouldn't care if someone was with a strong accent was in America. We would just know, oh, okay, have a, a slight comprehension that they're they're not from here. Not like we would destroy foreigners in human era, but in cellular era, if you are a foreign cell, you would be destroyed. But not humans. We don't do that. Okay. That was kind of a rough little explanation, but it helped you get a little idea on opsonization. Okay. Complement system directly destroy any pathogen and collaborates with every other component of the inflammatory response. It includes three pathways. The classical pathway, which we use antibodies to target. Alternative pathway, which is where we use several substances found on the surface, and it directly activates the complement system to attack the infection. Or we have the lectin, which is activated by several plasma proteins. So, have you guys ever heard of MAC complexes? Is when basically like all these things come together and they cause a whole. So we're going to search complement system pathways. It would have been cool if they put a picture up on the slide, huh? Okay. Wow, these ones are all really big. Okay. Oop. Okay. So basically, the classical is when our don't know all of this, but the classical is when our antibodies um, cause attack the invader. So IgMs, IgGs, we're attacking the invader. Okay. Alternate is when all these factors in complex proteins or complement proteins come together and they create like this ring, and this ring just like jabs straight into the pathogen, and it causes a huge hole, and that causes lysis of the pathogen. So I'll show you a picture of this in a second. And the lectin complement system is where we opsonize pathogens, so they can they have so more phagocytic cells can come over and phagocyte them. So this basically is we're just using complement proteins to phagocyte. So this again is antibodies attacking. This is complement proteins coming together, making a ring so it can stab the membrane of the cell and cause lysis. And this is like our complement proteins tattletelling on the pathogen. Like it's going, hey, teacher, like this person's bad, this person's being mean. Like that's basically what it's saying, except it's just going, hey, white blood cells, this person's being mean, like you need to attack them. Like, so, get it? Maybe that helps it stick a little bit. Oh yeah, I was going to show you guys membrane attack. Okay. Zoom out. Okay, so this is a membrane attack. See how it made a ring, and then it jabs itself into the membrane, and now water is just going to spew all out of this, and it kills the pathogen. See? Like this. Oh, those complement proteins make a ring, and they jab them. And, yep, that's the alternative pathway. Okay. Plasma protein system, the coagulation and clotting system. So basically, this is the formation of the fibrin mesh. It prevents the spread of infection, keeps organisms at the site of the injury, and helps stop bleeding, provides a mesh framework to help repair and heal. Um, it can either have extrinsic or intrinsic factors. Extrinsic is when there's a tissue injury and the tissue factor is activated, reacts with activated factor 7, and causes the whole cascade of the um, clotting complex. The intrinsic pathway is when there's an abnormal tear in the vessel, which causes factor 12 to converge with factor X, and factor X leads to fibrinogen or fibrin. Actually, there's thrombin somewhere in here, and then thrombin makes formation of fibrin and causes coagulation. So extrinsic is when we have an external tear, so like a stab in our skin. Intrinsic is if we have a rupture of a red blood cell. So say one of our heart vessels ruptures and we're having an internal bleed. That's an intrinsic intrinsic pathway. So just remember extrinsic 7, intrinsic 12. Okay, moving on. Okay, the Kinnin system is activated through factor 12 as well. And the final product is bradykinin that dilates blood vessels, acts with prostaglandins to increase pain and cause smooth muscle contraction. So we're going to contract those um, vessels near that site so we don't bleed out in that site. We're going to cause vasodilation everywhere else, but at the actual site, we don't want to bleed out. So we're going at the site where there's problems, um, we're going to constrict, and this will increase vascular permeability. Um, all right. And back to the last slide, it's smooth muscle that we're contracting, not the actual vessels itself. Okay, so now here is cellular mediators of inflammation. So um, so we basically in our blood, we have red blood cells, blood that carry oxygen, platelets, which causes clots, leukocytes, white blood cells, which attack bacteria, erythrocytes, carry oxygen. Oh, I already said that. Okay, so yeah. Anyways, I said those already. But leukocytes are divided into primary categories. So leukocytes are white blood cells, and there's granulocytes, which have basophils, eosinophils, and neutrophils. Let's go ahead and look that up because I saw that on the quiz, and there wasn't much information on them. So basophil, eosinophil, neutrophil. Okay, so basophil release chemicals to mediate inflammation and allergic responses. Neutrophils ingest and destroy invaders, and eosinophils destroy invaders, particularly by antibody-coded parasites. Okay, huh. Cool. And these one basophils and mast cells are basically the same thing. It's looking like. Okay, so we got some information on that. Um, I know we're supposed to learn that in prereqs, but homegirl doesn't remember that far back. Okay. Acute and chronic inflammation. So local signs and symptoms of acute inflammation are result of vascular changes corresponding in leakage and circulating components into the tissue. Acute inflammation may have manifestations such as heat, swelling, redness, pain, drainage. Acute is, oh, I already said that. Okay. Um, exudative fluids. So those are stuff that are coming out of your skin that don't look so pretty. That's basically like, you know, goo, serum-y grossness. So I don't know what to say on that one. So the top is serous fluid. So that is like watery drainage from early inflammation. So I am really white, so when I get sunburnt, I actually get some of those blisters on my nose if my nose gets sunburnt enough. And I remember I'd go to cheer camp, and it was a serious problem. Serious, you like how I did that? That I was not cute at cheer camp because I had a huge, serious exudate blister on the tip of my nose. Not cute. Okay. Fibrinous fibrinous exudate is thick clotted exudate. And so this one's easy to remember. Think of the fibrin cloth and clotting complex complement system, it causes thick and clotted cells to cut off, bleed out and stuff. So when we have fibrinous exudate, we would expect that'd be thick and clotted, right? Fibrinous, clotted, they kind of go together. Purulent exudate is pus, and that's on, pretty sure that one's on the right there, buddy. But yeah, pus, purulent. I think that is perfect. I want to be a dermatologist, so seeing that stuff squeeze right out of a pimple is perfect. Purulent. It's just like so satisfying to see a perfect pimple just pop that purulent exudate. I'm so gross. Okay, hemorrhagic, lots of blood, you know, hemorrhage, hemorrhagic exudate, lots of blood. Okay. Systematic manifestations of acute inflammation. So we have 3 systematic changes. Fever is a result of cytokines, which are endogenous pyrogens that are released and act on the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is what controls our body temperature. So that's like our air conditioning system. Like if we want it hot in the house, we turn the heater on. If we want it cold, we, the little box that you change the temperature on, that is what our hypothalamus is. If pyrogens are saying turn up the heat, they're going to turn up the heat, and the hypothalamus is going to make it happen. And so those pyrogens are released, so those high body temps can decrease the chances of microorganisms to survive in our body because they're sensitive to heat. Yeah. That's why, like, have you guys watched Parent Trap? Like, right before she pierces the ear, she like gets a match and like lights the needle on fire because she's heating it up. She's heating that needle up to kill the microorganisms on that needle before she pierces her sister's ears. I was always so scared of like watching that part because it just looked like it hurt so bad when she pierced the ears. Anyways, leukocytosis means increase of white blood cells. Yeah, we want more white blood cells to kill the bacteria. So, yep. Increase in number of plasma proteins, which are called acute phase reactants. So like I said, if we look back on all the complement cascades, all of those contain C-reactive proteins, which make up the complement, the membrane attack complex. Those are complement proteins coming together to make that ring to attack. So of course those would go up. Fibrinogen would go up, so we don't bleed out and we can clot the blood that injured site off, so we don't bleed out. Hepatoglobin would go up, amyloid would go up, and seroplasm. The last 3 I don't really have too much information on, but the first 2 do make sense. Just memorize the last 3, I guess. Amyloid does look familiar, but I'm not going to go too in depth with that. Chronic inflammation is when it lasts 2 weeks or longer. This is when we're unsuccessful in fighting with inflammation. So we're going to, like, if we don't fix the problem with inflammation, that inflammation is going to keep on trying and trying and trying until it fixes it. And if it can't be fixed, it's going to just keep on going and hoping that it can fix it, and sometimes it doesn't. So a splinter can cause that. Other causes are waxy microorganisms that have a waxy surface, such as TB, that can protect them from neutrophils from phagocyting them, or help them from MAC complexes and stuff. So yeah, that wax high fat content. That really saves them. They can survive in a macrophage, so leprosy. So if our neutrophil eats it and it's still living in our neutrophil, that's not really good either. And if they can produce a lot of toxins that enter our own cells, yeah, that doesn't help either for us. In our case, they're starting to win at that point. And chemicals or physical irritants like a splinter, like our cells are good job at like fighting stuff, but if it's like a actual piece of wood in your cell, like a neutrophil really can't eat that. um yeah. Okay, moving on. Chronic inflammation, pus can form. And incomplete wound healing is often a characteristic because we're getting edema in that center. And when we talked about edema in the last chapter, we learned that that can delay the healing processes. Um, uh, Chronic inflammation is dense infiltration of lymphocytes and macrophages. Macrophages cannot protect the tissue being damaged, and body attempts to isolate the affected tissue with granuloma formation. Granuloma formation is when macrophages differentiate into larger epithelioid cells which can take in debris. Other macrophages become giant cells and are active phagocytes that can engulf larger troublesome particles. So granuloma can take in debris. Granuloma can branch into two different categories: epithelioid cells and giant cells. Epithelioid, debris; giant, engulf giant particles. Okay, moving on to the learning objectives. First line, skin layers, easy. Second line is inflammation, swelling, fever, increase complement proteins, and all that good stuff. Third line is like adaptive immunity. So we're going to go into that in the next chapter. I'm not going to get too into that. Don't want to confuse y'all. Effector T cells and B cells. I'm going to go into that in the next chapter. Briefly, so first line of defense, you have physical barriers like the skin, pH of skin, epithelial chemicals such as natural flora can kill bacteria and fungi and stuff. Um, oh, yeah, we grow certain chemicals, I guess, on our skin, like antimicrobial peptides. Sorry, that's not flora. Antimicrobial peptides help kill bacteria and fungi on our skin. Normal flora is also bacteria, but it's bacteria that fight, good bacteria that fight with bad bacteria that help save us. Opportunistic organisms are those good bacteria that that help fight for us, like our good normal flora. However, they're like those backstabbing friends. Like once they have an opportunity to better themselves that involves with like betraying you, they'll do it. So they'll turn on you. Like they'll be like, "Oh, hey, look at all these bad microorganisms are going to have a party in this infection. I'm going to join them and not stay good anymore." So, yeah. um, a key, Second line of defense, acute inflammation. We went over that. It's where we have redness and heat, edema, and pain. It can be acute and chronic. It helps dilate the blood vessels, increase permeability, help the phagocytes get into that area, and through clotting, it can the clotting system. We with fibrin and thrombin, we can create clots and make a fibrin mesh for tissue repair. And the complement and Kinnin system are what help the migration and dilation of blood vessels for phagocytes. The manifestations of inflammation are fever, increased pulse, respiration, sweating, tachycardia, increased white blood cell count. Okay. The difference between acute and chronic inflammation: acute is localized, under 2 weeks. Yeah, redness, swelling, heat, pain, increased blood flow, vascular permeability. Those all come with acute inflammation. Chronic inflammation is over 2 weeks and is constantly being destroyed in the process of trying to heal. So it's just going to keep trying until it gets it, and it's not getting anywhere. They'll have increased liver proteins, and it'll just be a long time. So the descriptions of humoral, cellular, active, and passive immunity. So that is chapter 7, learning objectives. So I'm not going to go into that right now. You will see that in the next chapter.